And we're live.
And we're live. Do. I'm your host, Barrett Brooks.
And I'm Nathan Barry.
Welcome back to another episode of The Future Belongs to Creators. I am kidding. I am not Barrett Brooks.
And
I'm Alexis Teichmiller, and I run the affiliate program here at ConvertKit. And this is my co-host for the day.
Not Nathan Barry. I am Haley Janisek, and I am on the biz dev team. We got to chat a couple weeks ago when I got to hang out with Barrett for a little bit. So this is round 2.
Yeah, round 2 for me too. I was on the podcast about a month ago now with Nathan talking about vulnerability. And this week is actually ConvertKit's board meeting. They usually meet in person, but it's going to be all virtual this week. And so we're stepping in for Nathan and Barrett. And I'm really excited about today's topic, Haley. For you guys to have some context, Haley is basically my work wife. We work a lot together. We've traveled a lot together on behalf of ConvertKit. We've hosted masterminds together, worked conferences together. We know a lot about each other. Wouldn't you say?
Just a fair amount, maybe some things I'd rather not know. No, I'm joking. But yes, work wife is an accurate description of our relationship for sure.
Yeah. So whenever we were prepping for today's show, we were talking through all the different aspects that we know, what we've learned so far in our creative journeys, working at ConvertKit, on our side hustles. And something that kept coming up as we were prepping was the word mentorship and how important it was to be a mentor, have a mentor. And then as we even dug a little bit deeper into that, we really wanted to talk about being teachable and being a student. Because what would you say is kind of the difference between a traditional mentorship and just being teachable all the time, Haley?
Such a good question. I think about this a lot in context to both my previous career, my career at ConvertKit, my time spanning the tech community. And I think at ConvertKit, it was actually one of the first times where I feel like I had a lot to learn. And I had a lot to learn from people that were my junior. And that feels like the big difference to me is that mentorship seems to be something that you seek out because you're looking for, and it's usually with someone that might be older. And it's usually you're looking for something obviously from that person. It's sometimes mentorships have like a beginning, middle, and an end. And sometimes mentorships, like Barrett has a mentor that who's been his mentor for, like 10 years,
Right.
But being teachable is a little bit different because, you have to have a level of kind of vulnerability in a way. And you also have to be able to recognize, oh gosh, I don't know that thing. And maybe this 24-year-old's going to come in and teach it to me. And I don't know, there's a big key difference. Alexis, in our relationship, Alexis has taught me a lot of things. And it's been a really fun, our relationship has been a really fun dichotomy of me being a little bit older than her and her being a bit younger than me, and then seeing kind of how the things that we've learned from one another.
Yeah. And we forgot to do red, yellow, green. So I want to dig into that, but I'm looking at the notes here and I want to circle back to that, but how are you doing red, yellow, green? And for those of you joining us live, I'd love for you to write in the chat of how are you doing? Go first, Haley.
Well, first, let me start by saying thank you to those in the chat who pointed out that we forgot to do red, yellow, green, because we can't forget that. I am probably green today. I'm feeling really good. I've been working on this really fun project at work called Creator Sessions, and we're releasing something really fun on Friday. And I just have all the warm feelings about what I'm working on. And when you're working on a project that both stretches you quite a bit and is also really fun and creative, I'm feeling the high off of that. What about you?
I love that. I can't wait for Friday. Creator Sessions, the last 2 that we've done have already been so good, and I can't wait to see how this evolves. I would say I'm feeling pretty green. It's Monday. It's also the first Monday of a new month, and it's the month that's in the middle of the quarter. We at ConvertKit do a lot of our goals quarterly. And so April was the first month, and now it's the second month of the quarter. And so I'm revisiting a lot of my quarterly goals and making sure that I'm on track with all of those. So that's going to be this week, is all the planning and processing to make sure that I hit all of my goals for the quarter. So to circle back to what you were saying before we inevitably forgot red, yellow, green, I would agree with you. I would say that traditionally, when you hear, especially in the creator community, to find a mentor, you're usually thinking about someone that is older than you, someone that is more experienced, more successful in terms of influence. It could be monetary. It could be a lot of different aspects of what successful means. But what I like about the practice of always being teachable is that you are learning from people who might not be, a 7-figure entrepreneur, but they still have something to teach you. And so you're putting yourself in this mindset of, I am always going to be a student, which is the topic of today, is never stop being a student. Instead of, I always have to seek out the most successful person to learn from, because you can actually learn from, everyone has something to teach, and it could be someone 10 years younger than you or 50 years older than you. And just being open to the fact that that you can learn from little pieces of different people's stories, instead of just someone that is like on this pillar of success.
Oh yeah. It's funny that you mentioned this, because I was actually reading or listening to this interview with one of my favorite musical artists. His name's Bear Reinhardt, who's the lead singer for Need to Breathe, but he has a solo album that's called Wilder Woods. And the album cover or the Wilder and Woods is some format of his two boys' names. And he goes on in this interview to talk about how his children have actually been the ones that have taught him most about life, right? And I found that to be, as a mom, I have 3 kids, but as a mom, I find that my 8-year-old, who I'm fairly certain is like more like, 60 or 70, she's like wise beyond her years. But I find that she's teaching me things as an 8-year-old all the time about life and philosophy and beauty and things, and the things that are most important, and creativity. And so it's a very different, it's like, I'm letting my 8-year-old teach me things, or I'm letting, my a peer like yourself, teach me things. I'm letting, I think it's very different, but it's really a unique thing. And there definitely has to be a level of vulnerability in certain types of relationships that are even, mentorship relationships, where the mentor actually learns from the mentee. And that you have to definitely there has to be a level of vulnerability in order for the mentor to accept teachings from the mentee, which oftentimes that's a huge benefit to a mentor-mentee relationship that is not talked about enough.
Right. It's not always one-sided. It's not always you're pouring into someone and you're not necessarily getting any teachable moments back. What would you say? We kind of outlined a few things that we think get in the way of being teachable. And this is actually a question that I'd love for you listening or you joining us live to journal through, either right now during the episode or after the episode. But the question is, what gets in the way of us being teachable? So for me, a few words that come to mind are pride, ego, and insecurity. And sometimes time. Like I use the excuse of, oh, I don't have time to reach out to learn something, or I don't have time to read a book about something I don't understand. So I those are the few of the categories for me that I sometimes allow to get in the way of me actually learning something. What about you?
I feel like I'd be remiss if I brought up the fact that sometimes my insecurity about being a woman in the workplace leads to me not being teachable. And I think that Sheryl Sandberg talks about this, she's the COO of Facebook in her book Lean In quite a bit, but how as a woman, especially in the tech space, you show up and sometimes you feel like you don't deserve a seat at the table. And oftentimes, if I feel that way in certain moments, I can tend to overcompensate. And rather than being vulnerable enough to say that I don't know how to do something, I might act like I know how to do something.
I have done this.
Yeah. And so it's honestly, it's not something, it's something that I want to say it's really hard for me to admit And it's an uncomfortable place to talk. It's an uncomfortable thing for me to talk about, because then again, it's this vicious cycle where all of a sudden I'm admitting that I don't know something, right? Or I feel like I should know it and I don't know it. And that definitely comes out of a place of fear. And I think that unfortunately that happens to women more often than it happens to men. Um,
I would agree
kind
with
of,
I would agree with that. I've had similar experiences, even with age, of like about the deserving a seat at the table. And you and I have talked about this, and Haley actually has called me out in situations privately where I have tried to overcompensate for my age. Like in certain business situations, we're at the place in our friendship and working relationship that sometimes after a conversation, a sales conversation or a dinner with potential clients or current clients, we'll ask each other for feedback on how the other person handled certain situations. And I've found that to be so helpful because I've lowered my guard. I trust you. I'm not going to, I might get defensive internally, but externally, I'm like, okay, I know that this is important for me to learn. And it's like taking down those walls of that pride ego can allow you to get really defensive of like, oh, I already know this. I don't need to learn that. It's almost as like, I already know everything, which is, we never know everything. But there's that like piece of defensiveness that can come up too when you are presented with a potential learning opportunity from feedback or whatever, and you internally are like, ooh, that's a little bit too close to home.
So I've always found, and I'm really exploring this with creator sessions right now. Barrett, for those of you guys who don't know Barrett super personally, he's a pusher. And not like a drug pusher, like, like Mean Girls. Oh gosh, what's that teacher name? He's
I don't know. I think, well, it's Tina Fey who plays her,
Tina
but I
Fey,
don't
yeah,
know.
Tina Fey's character. But he's a pusher. He always pushes you to be a better version of yourself. And one of the things that he told me when I was exploring, or we're kind of navigating through this whole thing with creator sessions and where we want it to go eventually, is he said, like, really lean into this creative like intuition that you're feeling about it. And something that I've tried really hard to take and practice with this thing is to take advice from a lot of people and be really open to what people are feeling about it, but to take what I want and throw out all the rest of what I didn't feel. What they're sharing might be totally valuable and valid, but I'm creating this thing, right? And so by taking feedback from people and by opening yourself up for that feedback, especially in a creative fashion, you have the freedom to do that, right? You have the freedom to take what you want, implement what you want, and then kind of say, I think I might disagree with the rest. But the very first step is actually opening yourself up for that, right? This creative, that's very different than, let's say, something that's very tactical, like a golf swing, right? It's like if you have a golf coach and they're telling you to do something, it's like you should probably do that thing because it's going to make your ball go straight, or it's going to make if you don't, it's going to make your ball go off to the right or the left.
Right.
And I think that is something that's really important to keep in mind, is that just because you're inviting someone to critique your art or critique whatever it is that you're doing, doesn't mean that you have to apply all of that, or that, it just means that you iterate on something and you learn something that, yeah.
I love that. One of my mentors used to say, take it all in and sort it out later.
Mm.
And whenever you're feeling like you're drinking out of a fire hydrant, whether you're an early creator, whether you're a more experienced creator, and you're getting a lot of feedback from your audience or your community, sometimes you're going to implement what your audience wants, and sometimes you're not, because it's too far off your path. And so I think it comes back to like focusing on what feels in alignment with your goals and where you're headed. And if someone's giving you feedback that doesn't really feel in alignment, you can say, thank you, I appreciate that. And then you can store it somewhere for later, or you can decide to just kind of archive it and be like, I'm not going to implement this. But it's just that humbling of being open to feedback and to being teachable. And you've said it a couple of times, Haley, that it's a more vulnerable like experience, especially when as a creator, our businesses are our children, like we carry them so close to us and we are emotional about them and we care deeply and it's very meaningful to us. And so when we lower the guard and be open to feedback, it can be really scary. It can feel like you're in uncharted territory. So, how would you say people can like posture themselves to receive feedback or opportunities to learn?
I think the most important thing is just asking for it. I've had a great guy. I actually was talking with Henry, who works on our I Am a Creator series. He's an incredible filmmaker. I was talking to him today, and I just said, hey, if you have any additional feedback for me, just sling it at me. Like, don't hold back, right? And I think that's the very first step from a feedback perspective or a feedback loop, is just saying, hey, I want feedback. And oftentimes, there might be moments where you don't want feedback. Sometimes, actually, in our upcoming creator session, one of the artists during an interview, he said that oftentimes when you share art or you share something with someone, that they assume that you're inviting feedback, and sometimes you're not, right? But other times you are. So I think that if you're going to share your art, or you're going to share, you're looking for feedback, the very first thing that you should do is just be like, you walk out of a business meeting, or you walk out of a critique, or you're asking someone to look at your side hustle, your art, whatever it is, and you're saying like, hey, what's your feeling on this? Or how do you think I handled that conversation? Or what could I have done differently? Or what could I have done better? In the business setting, we have a lot of teammates that ask for that all the time in day-to-day conversations. Hey, I'm putting this, redesign out on the homepage. I'm looking for your feedback. So I think that's the most important thing, is just saying, please share.
Yeah.
Tell me.
And that is also one of the benefits of being in a culture at ConvertKit where we often do red, yellow, green. And I think even in one-on-one conversations, checking in with someone before you give them feedback, like if it's unsolicited, let's say you have some feedback on an email I sent to affiliates, and I didn't ask, you read it, which is awesome, but you wanted to give me some feedback on it. A great way to go about that is to, hey, are you in a good headspace right now to receive some feedback about the affiliate newsletter? I can say, yeah, absolutely. Like, throw it at me. Or I can say, actually, today's been a difficult day. I'm not really in the headspace. Can we throw 15 minutes on the calendar tomorrow morning and talk about it over coffee instead of right now? And so I think that's another good way for the person that's giving the feedback for the teachable moment to check in and make sure that you're not just unloading your thoughts and opinions on someone without checking in with where they are, especially if it's kind of that unsolicited experience.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm not sure actually if Nathan and Barrett have talked about the format of unsolicited feedback on the podcast just yet, but for those of you guys who don't know what that is, we do this real cool practice at ConvertKit where basically you pretend. In fact, we just did it last week with all the directors, where we got on a call and the directors essentially went on mute, videos black, and then the team essentially talked about them as if they weren't there. But it creates this really cool environment for you to receive feedback that you might not otherwise know to ask for. So Alexis is referencing unsolicited feedback as though I'm just coming to her, but there's lots of ways to get feedback on your work, in more formal type settings like that as well.
Yeah, and some more like tactical versions. Well, first, whenever she said we'd talk about them as if they're not there, everything we say is with love and kindness and with growth in mind. And so we start a lot of our sentences with like, one thing I wish for Haley is XYZ, or something I've noticed in a great area of growth that I've seen her improve on over the last 6 months is XYZ. And so using that kind of language builds bridges instead of burning them down. Like, it's an opportunity for us to grow and celebrate and also give some critical feedback at the same time, which I love. We do it not just with our directors, but in our individual teams as well. And that's one of the ways I would contribute the majority of my growth as an adult is to working at ConvertKit and being in an environment where my team cares a lot about me and they're always like, hey, they're either lifting me up, which is awesome, or in certain scenarios, they're teaching me a lot and saying, hey, here's an area I think that you could grow in. And that translates to not just business, as we know. Things I can grow in at work are things that very well translate to life as well, you know?
Mhm.
Okay, moving on to some more tactical stuff for asking for feedback.
Mhm.
What are some ways that creators can ask for feedback, or whether maybe it's not asking for feedback, but just building habits of learning? So whether that be on one-to-one opportunities for feedback, or just, they want to posture themselves and build habits around learning.
Gosh, that's a really good question. I haven't fully thought through that. Do you have an answer for it already?
I do, but
Share, please share.
hey, in terms of one-to-one feedback, something I've loved is using polls on Instagram. And so it's a way that I can include I have a podcast as my side hustle called Deeper Life, and talk a lot about vulnerability and self connection and connecting with other people. And as I was launching the podcast, and even now, I'm always putting out polls and questions for my audience on, do you like this or this? Would you rather have an online course where you experience it this way or this way? And so I have given them two different options that I'm already mulling over, and then they're voting. And it's crazy to see how interactive my polls get. And then people are DMing me with additional thoughts. And it's just a great way to facilitate feedback in a way that you're already kind of prompting them with your two options. Love that. Same with email. You can do the same with like a link tag survey of what do you want to see more from me, and then use whether you're using ConvertKit or something else. Do you want to see X, Y, or Z? And then when they click on an individual link, you can tag that on the back end and keep track of what they're interested in or what they want to see more of. So I think those are two tactical ways. And then I even know some of our creators that send out about 5 emails a month to new email subscribers, and they get on 15-minute discovery calls with them. So it's like I would go back through my new subscribers for the month, and then I would randomly pick 5 people, send them an email and say, hey, I would love to learn a little bit more about you and your journey and how you found me and what you're hoping to learn. And you cap it at 15 minutes. You don't want to end up on a call with someone that you don't know for an hour, because boundaries of time. But those are really great ways that you can always be seeking that feedback from your community. And then in terms of like building habits, I would say journaling for me is the way that I'm always learning about myself and processing information. And then reading would be the other one, of reading books about things I'm interested in or things that I want to apply to my life or business. Those are the two things I do to kind of continue my continuing education.
I like that you had 4 things lined up really fast. So you had really thought about that question. I had not thought about that question
Okay.
deeply. But I'll take that question a little bit more. You took it kind of one to many, and then one to one. So towards the end, you're like, these are things that you personally do. One
Yeah.
thing that I would kind of provide some advice on is, if you are the type of person that you takes a little bit of time to break down the wall, to find the right person, like, to get comfortable with someone to where you're good at accepting feedback, or you have the right relationship to where you can accept feedback. um, I have heard a lot of people kind of do like essentially mentorship, like almost like interviews, right? Like, hey, I'm looking for a mentor, and I would love to sit down and have a conversation with you to see if some things you could teach me some things. And then having like 30-minute coffee type dates with someone that you're seeking or that you're trying to build a relationship with is a really good way to figure out if you're going to vibe with someone. And just it is more about just being intentional, saying like, I'm seeking a mentor, and I look up to you. I like your art, whatever it is that they're creating, or I know that I have something to learn from you. But how would we work on a one-on-one type basis? And I think doing like mentorship, mentor-mentee interviews, I actually think is a really practical thing to do if you're looking for someone that you feel comfortable getting feedback from.
I love that. I will say that let's flip the script a little bit and get
Ooh,
a little bit deeper with that one.
deeper
If
life.
you are seeking out deeper life, yeah. If you are seeking out someone that is highly sought after, let's say, like Gary Vee or like Jenna
Right.
Kutcher, Amy Porterfield, like people that are really um, very well known, influential in this space, and you are still trying to learn from them. How, or maybe you're asking them to be your mentor. How would you do that? How would you, because you're really good at building relationships and, business development. Do you offer to work for them for free for a couple of months as like an intern? How do you learn from people that are far beyond you? Or do you recommend, instead of like maybe you're at step 1 and Gary Vee's at step 100, do you recommend maybe starting out with your first mentor experience, maybe finding someone that's on step 10, like someone that might be a little bit more attainable?
Yeah, I don't know if it would be practical, like to say, I mean, you could always ask, but I don't know if practical
Totally.
advice would be like, hey, yeah, blow up Gary Vee's email address, send him an email a week for a year. I highly, highly doubt that's going to work. But practically, I would try to find someone locally in your community that you are looking for as a relationship, because then you can, post COVID world, you can build that like personal relationship, and people feel things so much differently when you're in person. And I don't think that I think that where there's like that real connection, like if you take you and me for an example, right? Like I'm not a level 100 and you're not a level 1, right? Which is why you and I work really well together, is because we're on similar trajectories, and in age wise, we'll ignore career path, but in age wise, I've been married for 10 years and you've been married for 6 months, right? But that's not this huge gap. So I think I would look for someone that was a little bit like their career was attainable to you at that moment, type thing, or their where they were, they had really practical steps. Because someone, if you might look at Gary Vee, he might say, I honestly don't remember what it took for me to get to step 0 to 10. I'm in that 90 to 100 phase right now. So I probably look for someone that was a little bit more, their career was a little bit more attainable to you based off of where you were in that moment.
That's really good advice. I like that. That way, a lot of people that are at that influential level in their careers, they do have a lot of free, trainings and things like that out there too that you could learn from. But that one-to-one like mentorship relationship, I like that idea. Apologies for the noise. Of course, they're doing yard work right next to my window during a live. So apologies for that. In terms of like closing the feedback loop, that's
Mhm.
something that we talk a lot about at ConvertKit. You ask for the information, you put something out, you got information back in the form of feedback. Then what do you do with it?
I mean, I think I kind of feel like we talked about this already, where it's like you take what you want and you throw away the rest, right? So it's like, I think there's a variety of ways that you can actually implement feedback. But sitting down, like kind of what you said, is detailing out and writing it. But most importantly, it's like putting it in practice. I find that as a student of things, there's a lot of things that I want to learn, but if I am not really intentional, and this is just my learning style personally, but if I'm not really intentional about implementing those things into my daily practice, then I forget them. And for me, it's like for example, I was a volleyball player, right? And you can take this like 10,000 hours kind of concept and mirror this, but I played and coached volleyball, and it's completely second nature to me because the feedback loop was always continuous. Like I'd practice something, I'd implement something, I'd go to practice the next day, I'd try it again, try it again, try it again, to where it became completely second nature. And too oftentimes I find that people of something, or students of something, they want to learn something and they learn it and they might implement it for a short period of time, and then they just kind of throw it out the door, where that thing that you're trying to learn is never really going to take the full effect if you don't continue to practice it or continue to implement it in whatever it is that you're trying to learn. So I would say like intentionality in making it a part of like your daily habits. James Clear talks quite a bit about that, getting 1% better, and I really feel like it's the exact same concept.
That's actually a really good point. I never really put it in that context of that feedback and what you want to change about your life, and then turning that change into actionable daily habits. That
Mm.
actually makes a lot of sense. James's book, Atomic Habits is such a good read. I actually put it on my list to reread it this month because I feel like it's been a year and a half. I need to read it again, especially during quarantine. I feel like a lot of my habits have taken a hit, to be honest with you. Even though ironically, I feel like it should be easier to do habits, but it's been harder to stay on track. Okay, I think we should transition to the end of the show. It's been about 30 minutes. Thank you for all of y'all that have been watching live. So we transition into creator of the day. Do you have a creator of the day that you want to highlight?
I do. Hold on, let me grab this. So I talked last week. I'm just going to stick on the same theme.
Love it.
I'm gonna, this is all types of creators are open here, and I shared that I was obsessed with ceramicists. And since Mother's Day is around the corner, this is what I asked my husband for. So we'll see if he comes through, you guys. So there's a local ceramicist. Her name is Lala, and her brand is Lala Fresh Pots. And you see how beautiful this thing is? But she's
That
an
is stunning.
amazing, beautiful ceramicist, and she creates these, obviously, like, they're hand thrown, and I love something about feeling things, like tactile things that have been made in my hand. I know it's a little bit different than digital products here, but gotta love myself some like hand thrown clay.
I love that. Fun fact about Haley. I'm gonna go on like a little bit of a tangent, just like keep with me here. Haley has single-handedly helped me like buy better quality products and seek out artisans and small business owners and stop buying fast fashion. She helped me find like a better pair of jeans and denim company to wear. Like if Haley had a blog about sustainability, I would definitely follow it. But thank you for that. And she's also the reason that I have more pottery in my home than I ever have before. So you never know how you can influence someone.
Hey, I'll take it. Who's your creator of the day?
Yeah. So my creator of the day, her name is Tezza. I'm going to drop her Instagram handle in the live YouTube chat. But if you go to Instagram and type in Tezza, Tezza, she's one of my favorite creators. She is an artist. She's a singer. She is a photographer. She's a fashion blogger. She also created this really cool collage kit company where these are all of her photos that are hanging behind me right now. And she sells cardstock 150 packs of all the different photos that she's taken. And it's a really cool way, especially if you rent and don't own a place yet, to decorate your office and decorate your home. So she's my favorite creator in the world. So big fan of her. Okay, what's your resource of the day?
Ooh, okay, this is great because you and I actually found out about this resource together at a conference at Upreneur in London, which is hosted by Chris Ducker. I am obsessed with the Otter app. So if you guys do not, you heard me reference that I have 3 kids. Well, I also have an 8-month-old baby. And with that comes something called mom brain. And that basically means that you forget everything. So this app will actually dictate speaker 1, speaker 2, and take and translate all of your notes. And it has been the most valuable resource for me after coming back to work from maternity leave, because you can dictate conversations, you can just take notes on things that you're brainstorming. It is incredibly valuable. You can search specific keywords. Otter, I'm obsessed with it. You definitely need to use it.
And how do you spell it? Can you drop, what's the link to it?
Yeah, let me just, I don't want to, it's OTTER, Otter. Super easy.
So easy. So my resource of the day is, and if you're a podcaster, you might already know of this tool, but for me, I love using Zencaster. So I'm going to drop that in the live. And if you are listening to us not live, it's just Zencast plus the letter R. And this is how I record all of my podcast audio. And the one thing that I love the most is that after you're done recording, it has an auto post production where it'll take your 2 audio tracks and put them together, clean them up, buff out all the background noise, and make sure all your audio levels are the same by the click of one button. And that just, for me, like, I'm a side hustler, like podcasting, that auto post production is like the best. So definitely highly recommend Zencaster. And no, I am not affiliated in any way. And that is not my affiliate link in the live YouTube chat. So if you use it, I hope you enjoy it. Any lasting thoughts for the day, Haley?
I don't think so. I just am so happy that we were able to do this today. I love you. I loved that we got to impersonate Nathan and Barrett today. I don't remember who it was who said it in the chat. They said it's like parents are out, so it's like we could be a little bit naughty in a way.
Yeah.
I don't know if we were naughty,
We
if we
weren't.
broke any rules, but it was really fun to play Nathan and Barrett for the day.
Yeah. Thank you for everyone that showed up live. And I love this conversation. Go out, learn, and always be a student. And we'll see you guys tomorrow at 2 p.m. Central.
Or Nathan and Barrett will see you tomorrow.
Or Nathan and Barrett, or whoever.
Or whoever. All right.